The battlefield isn't just about bullets and bombs, it's about staying invisible. In the chaos of World War II, survival often came down to one skill most civilians never considered: blending perfectly into your surroundings. Soldiers didn't just rely on uniforms, they became masters of deception, bending nature to their will. They didn't just hide, they vanished. And the genius tricks they used are so clever, they still leave modern survivalists scratching their heads. World War II camouflage wasn't random patterns slapped on fabric. It was a science, a high-stakes art form. Every soldier knew that the wrong shade of green or brown could mean instant death. And every front, from the frozen forests of Russia to the sun-scorched beaches of Normandy, demanded a new strategy. These were men who could disappear under moonlight, slip past enemy lines, and make an open field look empty. One of the most incredible tricks was using natural foliage. Soldiers didn't just carry camouflage netting. They tore branches, grass, and leaves from the very battlefield they were on, and integrated them into their gear. Helmets were wrapped in burlap and threaded with twigs. Guns were covered with mud and plant matter to avoid glinting under the sun. Every piece of equipment became part of the environment. The genius lay in adaptability. What worked in a forest wouldn't work in an open desert, so soldiers learned to read the terrain like a living map. But camouflage wasn't limited to uniforms. Entire units developed deceptive positioning techniques. They would dig shallow ditches or trenches that weren't just for cover. They were optical illusions. From above, these pits, sometimes lined with vegetation or painted canvas, made soldiers appear as nothing more than natural shadows. Tanks and artillery weren't exempt either. Crews painted them in irregular patterns and sometimes even added fake foliage to break up their outlines. The goal was always the same: make the enemy look at a machine or a man and see nothing more than a random part of the landscape. You know, the Germans really perfected a tactic called disruptive camouflage. It might have looked chaotic to the enemy, but it served a very precise purpose. Soldiers would wear uniforms with these jagged, contrasting patterns. The idea was to confuse the eye and break up that recognizable human outline. From a distance, the eye just couldn't tell where one body ended and the terrain began. The Allies, well, they quickly adapted, creating their own patterns suited to the different theaters of war. And then, snow camouflage became a critical tool in the Russian winter. Soldiers wore white overalls and draped fabric over their helmets to erase outlines against the snow. Some soldiers, they took things even further. They blended into the terrain so well it became almost theatrical. Snipers, for instance, would fashion blinds from local material. Sometimes they'd crawl into spots and stay there for days at a time, completely invisible to anyone who passed by. These weren't just tricks, you see. They were life-or-death improvisations. One soldier might take a burlap sack, thread it with twigs, and then lay perfectly still in a forest clearing. A passing patrol wouldn't even notice a human figure if their life depended on it. Now, water offered another canvas for camouflage. Soldiers crossing rivers or marshes, they learned to coat their gear in mud and then let it dry. It wasn't just about blending colors. It was about removing those unnatural reflections. Gun barrels were wrapped in burlap or cloth soaked in mud to stop the sun from giving them away. Even boots sometimes were coated with natural mud to reduce shine and track visibility. The most ingenious tactics often combined science with pure creativity. Some units experimented with shadow deception, using canvas and paint to create fake shadows that tricked aerial reconnaissance. Trees, rocks, and even empty shell craters were mimicked with painted boards or canvas sheets. From the air, entire encampments could disappear, leaving enemy pilots unsure whether the forest was empty or teeming with hidden soldiers. Camouflage extended to movement too. Soldiers learned to move in irregular patterns, avoiding straight lines or predictable paths. Even the way a unit rested or fired could give them away. Soldiers would stagger movements, pause in shadows, and synchronize timing with natural distractions, like bird calls or wind rustling, to stay unseen. They became part of the landscape, invisible not just in color but in behavior. One of the most fascinating aspects of World War II camouflage was the constant evolution. As soon as one side discovered a trick, the other adapted. A pattern that worked perfectly in France might fail in North Africa. This forced soldiers to become masters of observation, reading not just maps, but the subtle cues of terrain, weather, and enemy behavior. Camouflage wasn't just clothing, it was a mindset. These lessons from the front lines weren't just about hiding, they were about thinking creatively under pressure. Soldiers learned to improvise, using whatever was at hand to survive. And while the technology today has changed, the principles remain timeless. Observe, adapt, and merge with your surroundings. It's a kind of battlefield wisdom that goes beyond uniforms. It's a strategy for staying one step ahead of danger. In a way, these camouflage tricks were the unsung weapon of World War II. Guns and tanks made the headlines, but the ability to vanish in plain sight saved countless lives. And today, that knowledge still resonates. Not just for historians, but for anyone fascinated by survival, strategy, and human ingenuity. If you found these camouflage secrets as mind-blowing as I did, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this video. The front lines of history are full of lessons that still matter today, and you won't want to miss the next deep dive into the genius tactics our ancestors used to survive the chaos of war.